Not everyone has access to a full lighting kit, so this week we're looking at ways to get more cinematic images by using only 2 lights. Hello, my name is Cade, and this is DSLRguide. So for this week's video I've put together 4 different lighting setups. The idea is just to show you how easy it is to improve your lighting, and I'm going to be comparing it to the original lighting setup, which is usually just like a single light bulb in a room which isn't very bright, and I'm going to be showing the difference just to kind of encourage you that actually it is really easy to improve your lighting and it makes a huge difference. So for the first shot we have a simple close-up. Now you can see from the shot that the lighting is pretty poor, and since it was so dark I had to shoot at ISO 800. And we can also see that the light from the other room is actually so bright it's pretty distracting. So let's drop the ISO down to 160 and stop down to f5.6, and if we add a rim light on camera left behind the subject, then that gives a nice outline to the subject around his face and also around the hand. And one of the things I like to do with LEDs is always put a little bit of diffusion, because that way it'll act as one light, because without diffusion you tend to get some strange shadows due to the fact that there are lots of tiny little bulbs which all cast different shadows. So put a bit of diffusion on it and that should work pretty nicely. For the key light I placed it in front of the subject, but 45 degrees to the left, so that the outside edge of their face falls into shadow. I wanted this light to be very soft and even on the face, so I set up the diffusion panel from the 5-in-1 reflector set, and then I also taped some diffusion paper on top of that for an even softer light. Now this shot is definitely underexposed, but then when you add in the second light it tends to even it out a little bit, and it's okay that a lot of the face is in darkness. It gives it quite a moody look, and that could be something that you're going for. Now of course if you want to just have that rim light, then that gives a very different effect which could be used in a short film maybe. So now let's try lighting some objects. Whether you're doing product shots for a promotional video or close-ups in a short film, it's really good to have some tricks for lighting different kinds of objects. So generally there are transparent things, there are reflective things, and there are opaque or diffused things. So diffused objects generally are going to be lit pretty much the same way that you'd light a person, but if you're doing reflective things, for example, let's take a look at this shot of a lens. All I did was position a second light so that you could see the reflection of the light through the lens. So basically you just move the camera and move the light around until you can see the reflection of the light through the camera. It's pretty simple, but it's all to do with the positioning of both the camera and the light, and this is a pretty easy way of getting some really nice looks. Now in this case, because the lens is so reflective, it looks pretty weird at the moment, but as soon as we add a diffuser, the same one as from the last shot, then it looks a lot better. You can see we get a pretty nice effect from all the different elements of glass. So for this next shot I'd like to demonstrate a technique which helps you to work faster and be more efficient when you're lighting shots. So let's say you're looking for a medium shot and a close-up of the same character. Well, it makes a lot more sense to light the wider shot, because then you can just move the camera and punch into your close-up, as opposed to if you had lit for the close-up, then when you back up you'd see all the lights were in the shot. So this is a very simple idea that if you're shooting a wide shot, light for that one first, because then you can just move the camera around and move some lights around if you need to, but you've got a very good basis where you can, if you need to, just move the camera around without changing the lighting. So for this shot we set up the same fluorescent light in the kind of standard key light position where it's 45 degrees from the camera, and in this case on camera left on the inside of the frame, except this time we pointed it upwards so that some of the light will go through the diffuser, but also some of it will bounce off the ceiling. Now this means that I don't have to have a background light, because the light tends to kind of fill the room quite a lot. So this works nicely because it means we can kind of get 2 lights in one. And then I added a second light. In this case it was an LED with plenty of diffusion, as well as some black wrap on the top so that it didn't spill into the whole scene. It would just light up the side of their face, which is on camera left, to give you a nice contrast between each side of the face. But the nice thing about setting up the lights for the wider shot is that we can then move the camera a lot closer to get our second shot, and that way we have 2 shots without changing the lighting at all. So another quick example would be this shot of a glass of wine. Now in this case we have some strange reflections going on because of the natural lighting, and there's not really anything to separate the foreground from the background. So let's drop the ISO back down to 160 and stop down to f4.5, and then we can start with a totally dark room, which gives us a lot more control over where the light falls. So this was a very simple setup with a very soft, large light source. In this case it was the fluorescent light, and this would reflect off around the edges of the bottle, and in this case the black wrap was really helpful because it allowed us to stop the light from hitting the background, which gives us a nice contrast between the subject and the foreground. And the second light was there to provide a reflection on the other side of the glass in the bottle, and for this we just used another LED, and I actually put a napkin over the LED just so that we wouldn't get those strange reflections from each individual bulb. So that was pretty simple really, but it did take a while to stop all that light from hitting the background. You have to be careful about how you place stuff, getting as close as possible without it being in the frame. So that shot works pretty well, but it also works on a white background, so you could use the same lighting and just rig up a nice white background behind it. As you can see from, if I pause it on the frame with my shirt in it, you can see that it does also work pretty nicely on a white background. So that's it for this week, but if you're interested in any of those products that I used throughout the video in all the different lighting setups, then if you head over to the blog post, you'll be able to find links to all the different products I used in this video. And also I'll have linked on there some other people's lighting videos which I found really helpful, so that's probably worth checking out. But yeah, that's it. Here's my Twitter, and I'll see you next time.